So the third chapter is trial balance. What does a trial balance really mean? A trial balance is a list of the balance on accounts in the ledger of a certain date. We did ledger, right?
Yeah.
So all the ledgers we have for assets, for liabilities, for expenses, for incomes. So when you combine all these together, you put them in a trial balance.
Okay.
Why do you have to put them in a trial balance? You put them in a trial balance to show if there are errors in your transaction or not. So a trial balance shows us out. So let's quickly go back to what the purpose of trial balance are. That means the importance of trial balance. One, it helps in locating arithmetic errors. So if there are errors in the course of you deducting or adding, you'll be able to know through the trial balance because your trial balance will not balance. Also, you can use it to prepare your financial statements. That's your trading profit and loss account. So that means with the help of trial balance, we will be able to note whatever arithmetic error we have in terms of adding and subtracting. And also we can use it to prepare our financial statement, which is our trading profit and loss account and our balance sheet. Okay, so this is a format of a trial balance. So in a trial balance, you have your bank, which is always going to be on the debit side, capital on the credit side, fixtures and equipment, which is an asset on the debit side, loans, which is a liability on the credit side, motor vehicle, which is an asset on the debit side, rent payable, the rent that you paid out, rent payable is an asset. Rent payable is on the debit side because it's an asset for you, which is an income. Yeah. Then rent receivable, you paid out your expenditure. Rent payable is a liability. Rent payable is an asset for you. Rent receivable is a liability because you are paying for rent. Drawings is an asset. Drawing is on the debit side. Inventory is on. This is your opening inventory. We call it opening inventory or opening stock. Opening. Purchases, you receive those goods, right? It's an asset for you, which is on the debit. Sales, you sold out, which is on the credit side. Remember that these sales will become a revenue for you, will become an income for you. Okay, so your sales returns, those goods you sold out that your customers return to you, return inward, is on the debit side. So sales return is the same as what? Returns inward. Then purchases returns, which is the same as returns outward. Returns outward will be on the credit side because it's going out. So, I have them fully here. Yeah, your carriage inward. Carriage, that means the amount of money you pay for the product or for the goods to be conveyed to your premises. That's the carriage inward, which is an expenses, is on the debit side. Also, carriage outward is also part of an expenses, is on the what? On the debit side. Your bad debts is an expenses for you. Bad debts are expenses paid by the business because your debtors did not pay back. Do you understand? So you pay back, right? It's an expenses for the business. It's on the debit side. Salaries. Yeah, I talked about that. Yeah. Rent receivable. The rent you received. Rent receivable, that means you paid out, is on the debit side. On the credit side. Commission expenses, then expenses, it's here. Interest received, it's on the debit side. General expenses on the credit side. Trade receivables, your debtors, those that are owing you, is an asset for you, is on the debit side. Trade payables, those that you are owing, your creditors, is a liability, is on the credit side. And your rent payable, I said that already. Debit side, I think it's clear. Now, before completing a trial balance, it is important to know that the type of accounts which have a debit balance and those which have a credit balance. So for a trial balance, what are those things that go? Because the trial balance has a debit side and a credit side. So what are those things on your debit side? What are those accounts on your debit side? What are those accounts on your credit side? Your assets are always on the debit side. Expenses made are always on the debit side. Drawings on the debit side. Purchases on the debit side. Sales returns, that's return inward, is always on the debit side. For your credit side, if assets is on the debit side, liabilities will be on the credit side. Since your expenses are on the debit side, your incomes will be on the credit side. Since your drawings is on the debit side, then your capital will be on the credit side.
Okay.
Your purchases is on the debit side. Your sales will be on the credit side. Sales returns will be on the debit side. Then purchases return outward will be on the credit side. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Now we have a transaction. Here it says the following trial balance was prepared by an inexperienced bookkeeper and contains errors. Prepare a corrected trial balance as 31 December 29. So Jasmine, the first error here, trial balance for the year ended. It is not trial balance for the year ended. It is trial balance as at the year ended.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand? So that the first error here is trial balance for the year. It's not for the year. It's as at 31 December. So it's not for the year. So that's the first error.
Okay.
Then we go on to the other errors here. So cash, I told you earlier, cash is supposed to be on the debit side. It's posted on the credit side because Jasmine is because it was prepared by an inexperienced accountant or an inexperienced bookkeeper.
Oh.
So he posted cash on the credit side, which is an error. Error. Bank overdraft is a liability. It's supposed to be on the credit side. So this is an error. Drawings, it's supposed to be on the debit side. It's also an error. Are you getting it? Okay. No, capital. Yeah, the capital is okay. Yeah, capital is okay. It's on the debit credit side. You posted that right. Drawings, it's supposed to be on the credit side. It's an error. Land and building, which is an asset, is on the debit side. It's fine. Office equipment was posted on the credit side instead of the debit side. So it's an error. Loan from AB. Loan is a liability and it's supposed to be on the credit side of the trial balance. It's posted on the debit side. It's an error. That's why I'm using ER as an error. Purchases. Okay, inventory is on the debit side, which is fine. Then purchases. You bought the goods. It's supposed to be on the debit side, but it's on the credit side here, so it's an error. So sales. Sales is what you sold out. It's supposed to be on the credit side, but it's on the debit side here. It's an error. Sales returns. Sales returns is return inward, which is supposed to be on the debit side, but posted on the credit side. It's an error. Purchases returns. Return outward. It's supposed to be on the credit side. It's posted on the debit side. It's an error. Carriage inward is an expenses, which is supposed to be on the debit side on the trial balance, which is right. Okay, it's posted on the credit side. It's wrong. Wages or salaries, they are expenses. They are supposed to be on the debit side. It's right. Rent receivable. Rent receivable is an income. Do you understand? Rent receivable, you receive rent from your, maybe from your tenants. So it's supposed to be an income for the business, right? So it's supposed to be on the debit, on the credit side, but it's posted on the debit side, which is what? An error. So rent payable is supposed to be the debit, which is an expenses. Sundry expenses and expenses is right. What else do we have there? Trade receivable, your debtors. Trade receivable is a debtor, those that are owning your business. It's an asset for the business, right? So an asset for the business is supposed to be on the trial balance debit side, which is posted on the credit side, which is an error. Then trade payable, which is supposed to be on the credit side, was posted on the debit side, so an error. That is why you look at the final balance here, it's 63,670 on the debit, 68,090 on the credit. It is not balanced. And your trial balance must what? Must balance. So it didn't balance because of these errors. So look at the corrected trial balance. Now, based on the errors we have, the first error was just in trial balance for the year. It's not for the year, it's corrected trial balance at 31st December 2019. Is that clear? So cash on the debit side now. Bank overdraft on the credit side. Capital on the credit side. Drawings on the debit side. Land and building, which is an asset, debit. Office equipment is an asset, debit. Loan is a liability on the credit. Inventory, the first opening inventory is an asset, is on the debit side. Purchases is on the debit side. Sales will go to the credit side. Purchases returns. Return outward is on the credit side. Sales return inward on the debit side. Carriage inward is an expenses on the debit side. Wages is on the debit side because it's an expenses. Rent receivable, it's an income. It's going to be on the credit side. Rent payable, remember I told you rent payable is an expenditure, as an expenses on the debit side. Sundry expenses and expenses on the debit side. Trade receivables, your debtors is an asset, right? On the debit side. Trade payable, it's a liability on the credit side. Now when you add it all together, it balances. So now our trial balance is balanced because we have placed those entries on the right side, on the right account. That means debit is on the debit, credit is on the credit. So whenever you are correcting a trial balance, you are correcting that trial balance because the trial balance didn't balance. And at the end of your own correction, as a bookkeeper, your trial balance must balance. Is it clear?